And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Section 380 of the Criminal Code provides the following general definition for fraud in Canada. Everyone who, by deceit, falsehood, or other fraudulent means, whether it is not by false pretense or within the meaning of this act, defrauds the public or a person, whether ascended or not, of property, money, or valuable security, or any service. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to 1991.
Who are the people that are doing this?
It could be your best friend, it could be your neighbor, it could be a coworker, it could be a drinking buddy. It's everyone and anyone.
Well, that narrows it down. A huge number of people, employed or not, are falsely claiming unemployment insurance. During the fiscal year ending March 1991, Employment and Immigration identified nearly $700,000 in overpayments in the Terrace area. That's about 7% of the total $42 million paid out.
How many people in this area then probably are collecting unemployment insurance?
There's an average of 4,500 people on claim every month. It doesn't mean to say that over the course of a year there would be 65,000 people, but each month there are approximately 4,500 people on claim.
And of those 4,500, is it accurate to say that probably 5% shouldn't be on claim?
I don't know how many shouldn't be on claim, but of that, 7% of them will not declare work or earnings properly, or absences from the area, or the fact that they're in school and not available for work.
7% may not seem like a big deal, but it certainly adds up. Just ask Revenue Canada. The national average for UIC overpayments is only 5%, but they paid $11 billion in UIC across the country last year. If 5% was overpayments, that's $550 million.
It's your tax dollar that supports the system. Employers also contribute. Anybody who rips off the system is abusing your contribution.
If the national average is only 5%, why is this area higher?
Part of the contributing factor here may be level of education, literacy, knowledge of persons with regard to unemployment. It can be a variety of factors.
Whatever the reason, it's big business. Employment and Immigration has set up an investigation unit to look into all of the fraudulent claims. Once abuse of the system has been determined, several things could happen.
If it's earnings, we will verify their earnings with their employer and then go to the claimant themselves with the reported earnings by the employer and ask them to provide a reason for their not declaring these monies. If it's an absence from the area, we do the same thing. We go directly to them and ask them to explain their absence. The file then would go through to an agent, an insurance officer who adjudicates a penalty or concurs with the claimant, something of this nature.
If the overpayment was an honest mistake, the matter ends there. But when claimants are caught in fraud, not only is the extra money taken back, but they may also pay penalties.
Okay, the penalties range anywhere from 100% of their weekly benefit rate to a maximum of 300%, and it goes on a first offense basis. If in the event your benefit rate is $300 and you commit an offense and you are penalized, your penalty for a first offense would be $300. So in other words, you would repay the benefit wrongfully received of $300, plus you would repay a penalty of $300. Subsequent offenses, as I say, increase. So if it was your third or more offense of fraud or abuse, you would repay your benefit of $300 plus $900 penalty. So it would cost you a total of $1,200.
Through this system, Revenue Canada eventually gets some of its money back. But there's clearly a problem if that much money is going to the wrong people. And if Employment and Immigration have figured out what that problem is, they're certainly not telling.
Where are the loopholes in the unemployment insurance system that allows this to happen?
I don't really know.
According to Jack, most people think they'll never get caught, and even those who know they're pressing their luck continue to collect anyway.
I believe some people don't think that they will ever get caught. Others do it because they honestly need the money, and some of them are prepared to take whatever comes if they get caught, but they need the money now. Some of them don't have any other place to get money. Some people try and double up with unemployment and social services, but eventually they're going to have to repay something to one or the other.
Computer post-audit is the most profitable computer-generated investigation. It's very thorough, but it usually takes about a year to catch up with a fraudulent claim. Year or not, employment and immigration always get their man, and until that time, they have a message.
They are committing a criminal offense, and if they are detected and charged criminally, they would have a criminal record, and this could be a bar to future jobs. It could be a bar to international travel. That would be the primary consideration that they should have. Forget having to repay any monies, but it's just a stigma that is attached to their own lives.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The Canadian Coast Guard is a special operating agency within the Fisheries and Oceans Canada. They work to ensure the safety of mariners in Canadian waters and protect Canada's marine environment. Let us return to the archives to witness a visit from our southern brothers.
While the Canadian Coast Guard regularly patrols the waters on the Pacific coast, they strike up a stark contrast to the men and women of the United States Coast Guard. The big difference is that the American protectors of the waters are part of the military. Both Coast Guards do the same function, however, combining search and rescue with law enforcement. That foreboding military presence does give the U.S. Coast Guard quite a lift, especially in the vessel they use. Recently, one of the newest members of the American fleet, the Anacapa, paid a visit to Stewart and Hyder. The Anacapa is an example of a state-of-the-art vessel under the command of North Carolinian Kurt Springer.
Correct. It was commissioned, it was built in just south of New Orleans, Louisiana. It's about a year and a half old. It's 110 feet long, has a crew of 16 persons on board, and we have one woman on board. We have a female officer who's my executive officer on board.
What makes this particular vessel unique, or is it indeed not unique, and how many of them are there in the U.S. Coast Guard?
The Coast Guard has about 37 of these right now and is going to build another 12. What is unique about them is that its speed capability, it's able to do 30 knots, which is good for both our search and rescue mission in an effort to get there in a hurry, as well as from law enforcement.
Lieutenant Springer, what's it like to command 16 people on board of the Coast Guard vessel?
It's great.
Why?
It's probably the best job. It is the best job I've ever had. This is my 5th job in the Coast Guard. It's probably the best. I sometimes think it's the best job that I will have. It's just, there's nothing like command afloat. I don't know that I could describe it to someone that hasn't had an opportunity to be afloat, but just the respect that the guys give you, the authority that you've got. There's a lot of responsibility with it, but it's all fun responsibility, I should say. It's good, and it's also neat to be out there. I mean, I've had. We did a medevac out of Hoona once, and to have a guy stand there, it was really good. It was with tears in his eyes. He was thanking me at the end of the mission. I was able to get his father from Hoona to Auk Bay, and the guy just had tears in his eyes, and it was just, I mean, it just makes you feel good to be able to do that.
Yeah, people can't lose fact of the idea that that's what you're there for, is distress and helping people. That's what the Coast Guard's all about.
Right, exactly. And that's probably, we spend a lot of our time on law enforcement patrols, but we'll always be diverted for search and rescue first if to save life or property. I'd say the crew gets pumped up much more for the search and rescue mission. I mean, they like doing the law enforcement aspect, but just the adrenaline rush that the crew ends up getting when we end up going on a search and rescue case.
Being the commanding officer, so to speak, is one thing. Being part of a 16-member crew is certainly another. Yet for West Hartford, Connecticut's Dan Babcock, it's a life that offers a lot.
Well, it's pretty good. It's busy, you know, especially being underway. You stand 4-hour watches, and then you're off for 8 hours, and then when you're off, you're doing boardings or doing ship work or, you know, maintenance on the boat, and so there's not much time to really, you know, take it easy. And we usually stay out 1 to 2 weeks at a time. And it just depends on, you know, what the operational commitment is.
Those commitments are just the downside of what can be a very exciting life for the crew.
Well, I think it's pretty interesting. You know, I get a chance to travel. You know, for one thing. You know, I'm from Connecticut, and all of a sudden here I am in Alaska, and I enjoy it. I love getting underway. You know, being on board and doing navigation type work and helping the public, and, you know, basically being there in case there's a distressed vessels and stuff like that.
An interesting living for the man who commands the vessel as well. Kurt Springer is a well-seasoned man of the water and knows full well what the U.S. Coast Guard is looking for in its men and women.
I think what the Coast Guard is looking for with somebody for command is just a variety of one is someone with some good managerial skills and possibly someone with some good interpersonal skills. Probably the biggest thing that is going to help me in the job is maybe not how technically proficient I might be, but that can I work with and can I motivate people to do things. The caliber of people that we get now in the Coast Guard, and I would assume it's the same for the other services, is just tremendous. The guys that we've got on this boat just work. It's just incredible the hours and effort that these guys put forth.
I'd like to compliment them on their public relations skills. Each and every one of the men that I've talked to on your vessel have just been outstanding. Do they work on that? Is that something that you insist upon?
Well, I'd like to think that I do that, but to be honest with you, it's probably just more just the character. That's just them, I think, is what you're really seeing. We don't, you know, we talk with them and we tell them things that they should and shouldn't, you know, ways that they can deal with the media, but we don't spend a lot of time on that, and you're probably just seeing the actual individuals coming out when you talk to them.
So the crew under Lieutenant Springer like their job aboard the Anacapa. Question is, will they make the Coast Guard a career?
For right now, it's kind of up to me. I signed up for 2 years enlistment, and a lot of guys will sign up for 4 years right to start. And I have the option of extending, you know, for a couple more years or re-enlisting, you know. And if I do that, maybe I'll stay in for a career. You know.
How important is this to you? How important a job is it?
I think it's important. You know, especially helping the public. You know, with distressed vessels. You know, if there's a boat that's on fire or flooding, you know, we're going to be there. We're going to be there in a hurry.
All in all, for a military venture, life aboard the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Anacapa sounds like a pretty good time. That air of contentment can cause a few problems for the skipper, however.
It's hard to, and you need to walk that fine line that you're working with them and yet that you're commanding them or whatever. And I'd like to think that we all do it okay, but it's not that hard, and I think the crew has a natural respect, and they just know the position as far as command. So I think that it's naturally it doesn't cause a problem is probably the best thing I could say on that.
Career goal for Lieutenant Kurt Springer would be what?
Well, I'm going from here to graduate school of the Coast Guard. I'll be going to Michigan State University, and then I'll probably be going to some staff assignment, at which time to use. I'll be getting a master's in public administration. I'll probably be in for 20. I've been in about 9.5 now, so I'd be looking, if the Coast Guard will keep me around, then I'll be looking to stay in for 20 years.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The dream of having a northern university goes back to 1960s, when then MLA Ray Wilsonson set aside land on which UBC's Prince George campus is currently situated as a university reserve. Let us return to archives to discover learning opportunities in the north.
On the first weekend of May, more than 100 students from the Northwest Community College received their diplomas. For many, it wasn't the end of post-secondary education. Most of the programs offered at NWCC are two-year university transfer programs, so a good portion of the students will be venturing down south to complete their degrees. A good portion, anyway, that can afford to do so.
Graduation is a rite of passage. It's one of a number that you will encounter through your life.
Jeffrey Weller is the president of the University of Northern British Columbia. UNBC will be built in Prince George by the fall of 1993. The university will work closely with 3 colleges in the Northwest, including Northwest Community College. With this new working relationship, it's hoped students who couldn't afford to go elsewhere to attend university can still get their degree, and students who had intended on leaving the Northwest for school will now consider staying.
Well, we hope that they will do 2 years here, for instance, in Northwest, and then they will take UNBC courses here also at Northwest College. The idea of having the university is that we restrict the movement of people around the North as well as from the North, out of the North to the South. We want to try and get degree completion for people in their home communities as much as possible.
Some of that working relationship has already been put into motion. The colleges and the university have made tentative plans based around what the demand in the future may be.
So the arrangement has been made that if UNBC does need additional facilities, they will be built on the college campuses. We're not in the business of setting up a whole new series of campuses around the region. We think it's only sensible to have our facilities in association with those of the college, and get joint use of library, of distance education equipment, all kinds of things.
I think the key thing, if we can build the programs, the curriculum together, then people coming here for 2 years in, say, business administration or nursing will be able to block transfer that and complete maybe here the 3rd and 4th year to a degree level. I think it's going to be very positive. Already have a good relationship with Professor Weller, and the concept that the university is starting off with, I think, will, as long as we keep pushing it, I know Jeff is pushing it himself, it can only be positive for here because more people will be involved in education, and more people are involved, then we all benefit, and that's, after all, what we're here for. So, yeah, I'm optimistic.
Anderson is also optimistic that Northwest students and the college itself will benefit from the arrangement.
First of all, more people will be aware and see that they can complete, and if not here, at least within the area. And that's going to attract more people to the college. We're already talking and working on joint facilities. Obviously, UNBC will require, say, library facilities, and so if we work jointly on that, shared facilities, communication systems. I was meeting last week talking about design of an integrated communications computer networking for the system. So I think if we can build on each other here, and then the dollars available benefit all of us rather than in competition with each other. There's just no room for competition.
So as much as the university will help students and the college here, you will be able to benefit the university as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's no reason why we can't provide services for them, like advising students. No reason why we can't have online registrations in communities and those kinds of things. And I think Jeff fully realizes that.
Well, I think it will open up a much wider range of opportunities for students than would otherwise have been the case. It'll allow for degree completion in more areas. And I think it'll, as I say, lead to new programs being developed, so really expanding the range of choice.
Although the Northwest is in desperate need of a university, most universities throughout the country have been facing great financial blows. Every year, funding is cut back a little bit more, and tuition increases. Despite the problems, Weller still feels the new institute is viable.
Well, I think it's perfectly viable. The enrollment estimates are quite healthy for the first few years, and I think they will continue to grow. The participation rate, as it's called, in university education is quite low in northern British Columbia. I think largely because people can't afford to go to the lower mainland, and I'm sure the participation rate will increase tremendously when there is a university in the region, and that'll mean we'll have healthy enrollments.
With the two schools working together, a multitude of doors are opened for Northwest students. The university and the colleges will stay in contact throughout the entire year to ensure that everybody's needs are being met.
Well, I think the most important thing is to keep communicating with each other, and the 4 presidents have agreed that we will meet at least 4 times a year to discuss anything and everything, but basically how to maximize what we can offer the residents of northern British Columbia.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. The quote was most likely due to writer and philosopher George Santayana. In its original form, it read, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." In this final segment of Open Connection, let us return to the archives with Josanne Viacourt.
With Canadian unity being one of the biggest question marks in the nation at this time, any enhancement of Canadiana should be appreciated. The Northwest is preparing to do just that. The Secretary of State for Canada has developed a traveling caravan that is in essence a multimedia presentation depicting some of the wondrous things our country has to offer. Bravo Canada will tour all of British Columbia and the Yukon in 1991, and during the first 2 weeks of June makes its stop in the Northwest. The tour manager is Josette Viancourt, who speaks fondly of the 3 14-meter-long trailers that tell our national story.
Bravo Canada is an exhibit. It's part of the Canadian exhibit program, and it's sponsored by the Department of Secretary of State. Our objective as a program is to instill a feeling of pride in being Canadian by showing some of our achievements as a nation, and this is what we do with Bravo Canada. The exhibit focuses on the land, the people, transportation, communications, as well as inventions and innovations, so there's lots to discover there.
Obviously, with a country as big as ours, it takes a bit of travel to show people your display. Your plans for 1991 are?
We're traveling with the mobile exhibit. We're traveling through British Columbia and the Yukon. We normally do 1 to 2 provinces a year, but British Columbia being as big as it is, and we're doing the Yukon, so we'll be spread out through these 2 areas for 1991.
And of course that means Northwest British Columbia, which is good for us.
Yes.
Can you tell us about
right.
what we're going to see from Bravo Canada here in the Northwest?
Okay, we will be touring from Prince Rupert to Terrace, Kitimat, Smithers, moving over to the East Coast, if you like, and we'll be set up on an average of about 5 days in each community. And there we'll be giving school tours. We organize tours for the students because of the sort of the educational aspect to the exhibit. It fits in quite well with their curriculum, and will be open to the public as well.
What does the exhibit include?
Okay, the first trailer talks about the land, Canada's land, some of our resources, as well as its people. So the story we're telling basically is what does it take to make up a country? With the land, we present some different points across Canada, points of interest, I guess, to people, like the Badlands. We talk about South Moresby, part of the Queen Charlotte Islands. As well, we get into some of our resources. So what do we have in Canada that's been really good for us? Our forests, for example, fishing, the fishing industry as well. Now within these areas, and there are panels with colors and pictures and everything of all this stuff. We also have a lot of interactive elements. We have computer games and quizzes that people can actually participate themselves. So for example, we have a living Arctic game. It's a quiz about how the Inuit live up north through their hunting season. So how do they hunt? What do they use for hunting? What do they hunt up there? So visitors can sort of play and answer questions and learn a lot about this stuff and have fun at the same time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.